Hello to all our Florida people. Was everyone okay with all the rain? Because we're getting it this week. We have a tornado warning in New Jersey.
Oh, my word.
Just rain. We're used to it.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Good, thanks. And you, Rob?
I'm doing great. Andrew, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you. Hope everybody's doing well, and you guys in New Jersey, stay away from those tornadoes.
Yeah. For those of you in New Jersey for this winter, and Andrew, you probably have heard this before, but when I was in 116 degrees out west, somebody told me, yeah, it's hot, but you don't have to shovel sunshine. So it's probably one that you've heard, most of you have heard, but it was kind of new to me. So we just give
Robert,
everybody.
how are you and your wife feeling? Are you recovering?
So my wife is now negative, so she's feeling much better. I unfortunately are still fighting it a bit, but I'm feeling better. Thank you for.
All right, you get started in it's 9:30. How are we making out with this is just for anybody while we're waiting for the rest of the crew to get on. How are we making out with the buyer agency, this whole transition? Anybody freaked out? Anybody feel like you've got it under control? Hello? Anybody?
Good morning.
Rob, the conversations I've had with buyers, some people truthfully never heard that this was even on the agenda. They had no idea this was happening. And when I started the conversation, they were very, very put off by the whole thing. But then once I spent some time with them and explained how things can play out, they seem to calm down.
So what's the underlying dialogue, Bobby, that gets them to be comfortable with the process?
Oh, I don't want to be on there.
I explained to them that in some cases, we can factor in a buyer agent compensation into the sale price. Some sellers may still pay the entire commission. So I try not to let them hit the panic button to let them know that there's alternatives. But I do finish up by saying, listen, if I'm going to show you homes, you're going to have to sign a document that says that I'm going to get paid, and you may be on the hook for it if the seller doesn't do it or wants to cooperate.
And do you think that some clients are going to see this as a positive, or do you think it's neutral to a negative for most of the public?
From the buyer's side, it's not a positive. That's what they think.
Just trying to get a better, here we go. Okay. So, Bobby, is there is there an argument that could be made that having everything spelled out in writing ahead of time, knowing what you're getting compensated, and not having to worry about whether a seller offers 1% or 3% is more equitable?
Well, hopefully I'm answering your question. From a realtor's point of view, that might be accurate. But just from the buyers that, number one, don't know this is coming, only getting half a story, maybe not getting the correct story, it is a little bit of an issue with them. You have to have the conversation. You have to calm them down.
Okay. So in terms of a customer, I can prosecute an argument that if a seller is not offering any compensation, that there will be much less activity on that property, and that I'm likely to negotiate you a better deal. And if we decide to work together, do you think that might be to your advantage if there's less competition for a property, Bobby?
Valid comment.
And then, Bobby, if there's less competition, and we have an agreement, because when you go to work, you get paid. When I list a house, there's a written agreement, we get paid. I'm looking to just get compensated fairly and deliver more value than I'm paid. I'm I'm going to tell you in almost every circumstance, we'll be able to negotiate the price down and then build the commission in to get you a net better price. So if that makes sense to you, I think we ought to talk about what strategy we use when we get you your next house. And I don't know if Gary Singer's on here, but I'm going to steal a line that I think I talked about a week or two ago where, when I first met Gary, probably 25, 30 years ago, you walk into one of his open houses and with all sincerity and enthusiasm, he walks to the door and says, "Welcome to your next house," or "Welcome to your next home." And I think we need to have that certainty, and we need to create certainty in the process. And, sometimes we're too close to the subject material that we lose sight that, like you said, Bobby, most customers weren't aware of it. And then when you explain it to them, they're a little bit, shaken. And if we can control that narrative and explain to them that, a seller that decides not to compensate, there'll be less activity and we might have an advantage in negotiating. Does that sound like it might be something that works for you? And I think most buyers would be in favor of that. So I'm going to turn the session over to Mr. Frank Del Pesce for a moment about the state of our interest rates, which have been going crazy up and down, and just take a moment or two, Frank, while the rest of the group gets on.
Thanks, Rob. Good morning, everybody. As everybody knows, interest rates, it's been a wild ride this past week since the unemployment numbers came out. Bonds did really well Friday when the unemployment numbers initially came out, but then Monday, Tuesday, the bond market got hit again. So it's been an up and a down ride. This morning, bonds are doing much better than they were. So again, we'll lose or gain an eighth or a quarter% in rate at any given week. So that's kind of the norm that we're in right now. We know that the rates have definitely come down from where they were. I mean, they're now in the sixes. So that is a good thing, and that's a great talking point. And obviously, when rates are lower, our pre-approved buyers qualify for more of a home. So the Feds, there's been a lot of talk about them, decreasing the rate, by about a quarter%, actually about a 0.5%. So we know a 0.25% is in line for September, but hoping that there's going to be a little bit more than that. And then obviously more rate cuts in the following year, end of the year, and then into the following year. So, but always keep in mind that rates, we're going to get calls on the mortgage side that, the day the Feds cut rates, we're going to get the calls from the borrower saying, hey, the rates went down 0.5% today. Are we at 6 from 6.5? And that's not how it works. And we've talked about this, many times on these calls. Right now, they're pricing into the market the anticipation of the rate cut. That's why rates are starting to come down. So, but at least it'll get our phone ringing, and at least you can have those conversations with your buyers that are those fence sitters, and just talk about about how interest rates, lower interest rates will qualify for more of a home. So, on top of interest rates, I just want to talk about a product. I got a call the other day from one of my credit unions that I do business with, and I was kind of humbled a little bit because they do send me business, not too often, but I do get calls, and it was for a non-warrantable condo. There was a 92% investor concentration in this complex, and obviously that's many investors purchasing homes in this one specific complex. So I actually on top of it being a non-warrantable condo, the gentleman didn't qualify with income, so we actually used bank statements to qualify him. So we like to talk about rates on these Zoom calls, which is great, but don't forget about the different types of products that we offer. Bank statement programs for the self-employed borrower that don't have the income because they do write everything off at the end of the year or during the tax season. So a lot of times, self-employed borrowers will come to us and we have to analyze their tax returns and look at alternatives. So on top of it being a non-warrantable condo, which one of my investors approved the complex, and we are able to, he's been in the process for a month and a half, and then they were supposed to close, and the bank came back and said, we can't do it. So that's why they reached out to me. And with my investors that we use, it was a no-brainer for them. we got the exception at a 92% investor concentration. So, and then we were able to use his bank statements to qualify. So we like to talk about some products too on this Zoom call. So if there's anything that we can do, if there's any scenarios that you know that you'd like to talk about, just reach out to us, and have a great Friday.
All right. So Frank, kind of creating certainty and piggybacking off what you just said. Frank's actually in the same building as me here, and I was overhearing some of his conversations, and it's not about the interest rate, and I can tell you that Frank's very competitive, but it's about the experience and the closing. And I'm going to draw a parallel between that and when you take a listing. If you ever took a listing at a reduced fee from what you normally charge, we're not going to talk about commissions, but if you took one from a lower fee because somebody said, hey, I need to only pay X. Okay. If that experience was not everything it should be, the customer's not going to say it's a great experience just because the fee was a quarter or 0.5% less. They saved $1,000. What they're going to remember is they're going to remember the certainty. They're going to remember the communication, the follow-up, the professionalism, the negotiating skill that you had in order to get them the house that they wanted, or in order to get their home sold at a limited stress level. Does that make sense? And lenders, sometimes we get head faked by it's all about the interest rate. And some of us may not know that, hey, you got interest rate of 6.25%, and your lender was at 6 3/8. But if they paid 3 points, that's not a good deal. And if they got a marginal experience, they're going to say that it was tough buying a house, and like it or not, you're going to get clumped into the same process as the attorneys or escrow companies that you work with, the lenders and home inspectors. They all contribute to the experience, and they look back on that, and it's hard to separate us from the other professionals that we align with. So I want to talk today about having
Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there was a comment that came up in the chat that related to where you started this conversation before everyone was on.
Yes.
And so it came from Glenn Baker.
Okay.
And said that they have received nothing but positive feedback on the changes from new and existing clients. He said, my 3 listing appointments this week all said, quote, I would be foolish to not extend buyer compensation.
Well, and Robert, do you think, Glenn is wishy-washy, or do you think he's pretty, convinced himself and scripted in a appropriate way to have that conversation? Because if you're in the wing it university where you're thinking about what you're going to say right before you say it, it seldom works out well. Okay. If you,
I'm sure that he has it down pat, because he believes what he's saying, and that's the key.
Right. So we had years back, we had Chris Smith, who is a big fan of, and I forget the gentleman's name who wrote the book Exactly What to Say in Real Estate. And the major premise there is, if you have to think about what you're going to say, you've already lost, right? If you have to pause and say, let me think about how I'm going to respond, it's game over. Okay, you're going to be sacrificing some business that way. In 2 minutes, I'm going to introduce somebody here and make a little announcement, and I hope we get 110 plus people on now. But I for one feel super certain, super confident about clients needing us more than ever. And I feel like the separation between us and the rest of the industry is all going to be about our comm skills. How can we communicate what's going on in a way that is relatable and helps them take, positive action. Okay. And it doesn't matter if it's in, Morris County, if it's in Ventnor, New Jersey, if it's in Palm Beach Gardens, or Pembroke Pines. It doesn't matter if it's in Virginia or even Arizona. it's all the same. And with that, I want to introduce our newest select group family, who's not going to be called select group, but I want to introduce a friend of mine for years, Howard Leon. And we had last week partnered up and acquired Remax Excalibur, 3 offices, a legacy Remax brand. Howard, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Good, good,
And
good, good.
Howard, how many years with Remax?
Oh, I think 33 to right around 33. 33 short years.
33 short years with Remax.
Yeah.
You know, Howard is a PBS broker, one of the top brokers in the system. I've met Howard probably 12, 15 years ago at these events that Remax has networking. And you know, we started talking, and Howard had made a decision to retire from ownership. And on the first, we've acquired Remax Excalibur, and we're welcoming him to the family. Welcome, Howard.
Thank you very much, Rob. This has really been an exciting period for me. You know, when I'm going to be 76 at the end of August, and Rob and I have been talking about, you know, transitioning and passing on the legacy. I mean, between Rob and myself, we all have businesses that we've had a passion for a number of years. And it's interesting, they're not just business. Rob has the same philosophy that I do, and that our associates are our family, and we absolutely have to treat our family with great respect. So the interesting part of our transition is the fact that my company now has the opportunity of working with a company that is on the East Coast, not the West Coast. And so there's many processes and ideas that kind of get baked in the cake with these regional dynasties, if you will. And I think that working with Rob and your family is really going to be exciting for our agents, because we're now able to share ideas back and forth that are transitional. They're going to absolutely help our associates on both coasts trade back and forth and develop processes and efficiencies that we should have probably used before. But my family is, you know, about just under 120 agents in 3 offices. But, you know, it's interesting. I'm in 2 really different markets. Tucson, Arizona, fabulous. I mean, it's a college town with 38,000 students. And I'll bet you guys have families that you work with students going to school in Tucson, Arizona, or Phoenix, one of the 3 fastest growing cities in America. Their university only has, I think, 110,000 students. So we get a tremendous inbound migration. So, you know, it's just exciting to have the opportunity to have my family share with you and everything you're doing. We're going to transition this thing smoothly. But Rob and I have been working together now for a solid week, and the only thing we've come up with is we seem to think alike, which is really nice. So thank you, guys. I really look forward to being a part of your group.
Welcome to the family, Howard. We're thrilled.
Welcome to the family, Howard.
Thank you very much, guys.
And I think
Welcome.
I think one thing, Howard, that I realized that I probably always knew but never really connected the dots when we were meeting is I think your team members, your associates, treat their clients better because of the way you treat them. And that's something that I observed from being an outsider there for a week. So if you treat your team members better, it delivers a better experience to the consumer. So I'm always learning, and you know, I thank you for that. And you know, I can't quantify what I've learned from spending time there, but I know that there's a lot of information that's in the back of my head that's going to make me a better broker owner in the future.
Thank
So,
you. One thing, one idea I might share with you, and Rob and I have developed this over the last week as well. But over the last 32 years, I try to never ever end a conversation with one of my family or even Remax without saying, "Is there anything I could be doing for you?" And it's really a great way to end the conversation. And I think it's something that, as you're talking to your clients, before you hang up the phone, just simply say, "Is there anything else that I could be doing for you?" And it's worked for me for a number of years. We kind of in Arizona, we're kind of to Arizona what Remax Select is to the East Coast. Very well known, very well respected. And we're going to continue that tradition, and we're going to grow out here with you. So thank you again.
We're thrilled. When you have a common goal, we parted the seas to put the deal together in less than a month and a half. And it's because we had that commitment when we first met. We knew of each other. And I think that just goes towards the certainty and the possibility when you think differently, right? And I'm watching the chat here, and I see Michael Bergman had asked Glenn Baker something on the side chat, and Glenn just invited him to the team meeting. That's the culture that we have here of collaboration and sharing. So anyway, one other little announcement. And I know this is going to be like you move my cheese, but we're going to be inviting our new Arizona family to our weekly mastermind. The unfortunate thing is, what time is it now, Howard, in Arizona?
It's 6:51.
So that would be an invite, non-invite. So we've made a decision that we're going to be moving our Friday mastermind from 9:30, as it's been for 4 years, to 11 o'clock. And we're going to be welcoming our Arizona family into the party. And I'm sure that they're going to make a contribution, and we're going to learn from them just like we've learned from everybody else that's participated. So mark your calendars. I wonder how many people are going to show up at 9:30 by habit. It's like when I'm driving somewhere and I always get off at one exit, I'm going to have to fight myself not to get off that exit. So next week, 11 o'clock will be our weekly mastermind. Our Arizona family will be there. Hopefully we'll get some nice participation, even though it's going to be 8 o'clock there. And there's one interesting fact about Arizona. It's the only state that does what, Howard?
We don't change time zones. Our time, we don't honor daylight savings time. So we never have to reset our watches.
So that means sometimes you're 3 hours different, sometimes you're 2, huh?
Correct.
That's going to be an interesting challenge for me. But I guess Howard, are you used to moving time in Arizona when the rest of the country changes? Like if something that's normally at 8 now is at 9, or vice versa?
Well, all I can say is it really messes up our vendors and just a number of services that we use, because their clocks are automatically set to adjust to daylight savings time, and so yeah, I don't know. We get through it. But the one nice thing is I get up at around 4:30 each morning, which works well for Rob, because we're both early risers, and we can discuss our challenges for the day without interrupting the day. And that's really a great compliment for each of us.
Yeah. And when I was out there in 116 degrees, one of your agents said, yeah, it's hot, but you don't have to shovel sunshine.
Well, and the nice part is when it drops down to 100, we call that sweater weather. So,
so anyway, we're going to go back to the topic for today, which is creating certainty in an uncertain market. And the thing that creates certainty starts with us, right? We have to have certainty. We have to look at what we have, and the change is here. It's not optional, right? So we can either resist the change, okay, and be angry about it, because it's like a grieving process. Like you go through stages. Like I was angry initially about this because I didn't believe in the motivation to what caused the change. Okay. And many of us don't believe that the reason why our industry has been moved is not for a legitimate reason. It's for a special interest reason. It's for attorneys to get rich. It's for a money grab. Does anybody on camera feel that way? You can raise your hand for, if you think this was all done for not a legitimate reason. Anybody? Okay. Howard, you believe that that change was done for not a legitimate reason, or?
I just have not understood the reason at all.
So
I did feel it was a money grab for attorneys, but on the other side, now that I'm discussing it more fluidly with clients, I feel like we didn't educate the buy side well enough, right? I'm not saying that everyone did the wrong thing, but I'm just saying I don't think that it was crystal clear that they're the only person bringing a check to closing and paying for us on both sides.
yeah,
Okay.
and wait, if you could just take a listen to the certainty that Mr. Baker had, right? Because he's not waffling. Your conversations that your team members and you've had with sellers and buyers, how much resistance have you had or had reported back to you from team members, Glenn?
None.
None.
I asked a question this morning on our call. None.
So that just shows you that it's the mindset and the preparation. And I can I use the term prosecute an argument. I can make the case that it's more equitable if we decide to work together, that we put in writing how I get compensated, and that my compensation is not dependent upon a agent doing a proper or poor job marketing a listing, because I'm giving you the same service. So I do believe that there's an equitable piece to it here. I do believe that if we communicate it properly, we are going to have way more wins than we have losses. We've talked about on these calls instances where because the imbalance of listings and buyers in the rearview mirror, some listing agents have been taken advantage of and taking 3-4% listings, putting out 1.5%, 2%. And there's been a tremendous inequity when that occurs. Okay. And oftentimes there's anger and frustration. I don't know, Howard, do they do that in Arizona? Are you seeing a big divergence in, co-op commissions before this whole settlement discussion?
No, we're really not recognizing or seeing a whole lot of changes so far in any process. It's interesting how smoothly this appears to be coming into place. Now, I do believe that we're leaving an awful lot of underprepared agents behind. They've been either underinformed or underprepared, or, and so the shock of the new forms and so forth has probably yet to set in with them. But gosh, we've had a great week writing new listings, and yeah, when you're working with professional agents like you have and like our family is, I can't even count how many market changes we've gone through over the last 33 years. And I wish I could say it's been a shock to us, but it really hasn't been. We've been working, we've been preparing, training, et cetera, just like your family has. So let's just keep pressing forward.
So Arizona, Florida, Virginia, New Jersey, wherever we're operating on, if we take care of the consumer, we master the skills and communication, we invest in ourselves, we have integrity and quality communications, we're going to land in a better place than we were before. Forget about whether we choose this path or not. This is the path. So we need to embrace it and move forward with it. And if we have anger, frustration, resentment, Do you think our clients are going to feel that in our voice and the tone? You bet. Okay. If we have uncertainty, are they going to be uncertain? Okay. You know, when we had Tom Toole on, runs the biggest Remax team in Pennsylvania. We had him on one of our calls. Howard, he talked about, you know, the buffalo runs into the storm because if you run into the storm, you get out of it quicker. Right. And, you know, if you're not bold and you're kind of cowering back, you're never going to get through it. And you're not going to be the professional providing the value to your consumers, you know, that you could, should, must be. Okay. And it's good to hear, Howard, that, you know, we have the same challenges. And I think regionally they might be addressed differently, but that's not the point. The point is we all come to, you know, the water seeks its own level and then we operate from where the market is. Okay. You know,
And Rob, you know, I just wanted to mention too that it's important that we realize that everyone, all of the agents that we interact with on a daily basis are now playing by the same rules. So it does become a matter of the survival of the fittest. I mean, if we're the ones who really have an understanding of the procedures and can explain it better than the other agents that we interact with every day, we're getting the business because the others will have that uncertainty in their voice that you're talking about. I
and
wanted to mention that, and then I just wanted to ask you one other thing. There's been some comments in the chat about the changing of the time for this mastermind, and if they're still going to be, how can they still, if they're not available at 11, can they still watch the mastermind?
so we do record the masterminds, so you can watch them, listen to them, go to the parts that are most relevant online. In the email, the bomb email with my brief video, there's a link below it with a link to the material covered today. Plus, there's a link to the previous sessions. So you'll still have that opportunity. And I want to get back to, you know, what you were saying, Robert. In this business, I find that the people who are doing the math in their head, they're saying, I'm taking a $600,000 listing and my net take home is going to be $14,250 are not the people that ultimately thrive or get the most satisfaction out of their position. Some of the best people I've seen in this industry, and I'm not trying to, you know, if this isn't how you think, maybe it's just something to ponder. But some of the best people I've seen in this industry, they just focus on taking care of the consumer. And if it's a $150,000 co-op or a $2 million home in Mountain Lakes, they're delivering that same service. They have the same enthusiasm. They're not, oh, I don't want to return this call. And maybe, you know, maybe there is some validity to, hey, I'm not going to, you know, run myself ragged for a $200,000 sale. But, you know, the people who get the most satisfaction out of the business and ultimately make the most money enjoy the process. You know, they enjoy, you know, the closing day when the person is thrilled and you can, it's contagious, the excitement that they have, right? Sometimes the excitement is elevated when it's somebody doing it for the first time, and you get to see that you're basically changing their life. And now, if I could wave a magic wand and have everybody program that that if you have somebody that's ready, willing, and able to buy, that you now have the communication skills to share with them the new process that we're required to follow, but more importantly, we're able to share with them the strategy that will get them to be successful. Okay. I was watching Byron Lazine and one of his co-hosts who run it's a free thing called BAM on YouTube, and it was Lisa Chinati, and she has an independent brokerage up in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And I even sent it to some of you on this call, you know, she had this minute and a half video that she recorded where she's like, you know what? Um, I love this change because now it's going to be in everything's going to be documented. And I know if I can sit with a buyer, I can communicate and relate to them that with 99.9% certainty, I will achieve the goal. I will get my offer accepted. I will get them in the house because I have the experience, I have the know-how, and I have the strategy to share with somebody on what it takes to be a home buyer in this market. And the same is true for home sellers for her, but she was on this passionate rage about how she knows with certainty that I find a buyer who wants to be in a house, I'm the one that's going to guide them to the proper outcome. Okay. I'm not just going to open doors and say, make an offer. Okay. And there's varying degrees from the brand new agent to the Lisa Chinati, Glenn Baker, top tier agent who, invests in learning how to get that communication strategy nailed every time. And I'm guessing, I'm going to put you on the spot, Glenn, but if you get a buyer that's motivated, even if inventory is tight, how certain are you that they'll be moving into a house?
I'll have them moved into a house with a concession.
In a difficult market.
Yeah.
And that's not that there's a difference between arrogance and confidence. And for those of you who don't know Glenn, what's your team's business up in the down market we're in?
220%.
220%. And about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, we spent better than half a day together. And I asked permission if I could call your team members and see, what we could do to help them better. And with all the accountability that you have, the only criticism I had was maybe, the team could hold me more accountable. Right. And can you share with the group what you call it? How do you define love?
Accountability is love. If you love someone, you hold them accountable.
Right. Think about it. Letting them not do what they need to do to be successful is not ultimately helping them. That's not what leaders do. And leaders share with them the process. They share with them the successes. They do audits of failures so that you can improve it, right? And then that's how we grow. So the goal is at the end of this session that everybody leaves with absolute certainty that your business is going to grow. You're going to take care of your consumers. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do the work, right? You're going to have to listen to others. Glenn offered Michael Bergman to participate in one of his team trainings. That's amazing. Learning from others puts you there a lot quicker than trying to figure it out on your own. Having a support system of people who are in it together, they're going to get you there a heck of a lot faster, right? So, we have new forms, we have new processes. For example, in New Jersey, I think there's 5 or 6 things that changed with the governor's stroke of a pen, right? The consumer, who knows what's it called? Consumer Protection. What is the one in New Jersey?
Enhancement Act.
Consumer Protection Enhancement Act. Okay, so on top of all the changes that are happening with the NAR settlement, New Jersey put on another bunch of changes that we need to comply with. And as we work through them, Fran, they're going to wind up being good. It's going to level the playing field, right? Because how many sellers need to do a seller's disclosure now, Fran?
All
of them.
Mm-hmm.
So every seller needs to do a seller's disclosure. So it's not like you have to chase it down. It's now required. And I think that's a good thing. Okay. So, but is there going to be some turbulence? Is there going to be some slippage during this transition? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, so I personally believe with buyers having a seller's disclosure is a good thing. And I think sellers that decide to hide things, I'm going to probably walk away from that particular listing because that's going to create problems, right? And one of the things that I discovered with Howard when we were talking was, I think you had two minor workers and 2 minor E&O claims in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
and you have 100 and, you probably had at the peak, probably closer to 160 agents.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
More. And over 1,000 transactions a year.
Easily
Over 1,000 transactions a year. So that's, 7 to 10,000 transactions to have 2 minor claims is just, that's amazing. But it's predictable if you do the right thing and you have processes. And having seller disclosures now being mandatory allows us as a buyer's agent to do a better job. Okay, mastering the communication. I use the example several times that when I go to rent a car, okay, I have to sign like 9 different waivers and disclose. Do I want insurance? Do I want roadside assistance? If I turn the car back with smoking, there's a penalty, right? All these different things I have to sign in writing. But you can work with a buyer to buy the largest purchase of their life. And before this, you didn't have to have an agreement in writing. Does that even make sense? So if you're struggling for either yourself or if you're an office manager or a team leader, an easy way to explain it is, previously the real estate transaction was controlled by 2 contracts. First contract was a seller hiring a real estate professional to market their home. And then the second contract was between the buyer and the seller. And then there was this association agreement that we would co-op a certain percentage by putting it on the MLS. But that was not a contract. Hold on. That was not a contract between the buyer and the buyer's rep. Okay, we were relying upon whatever the listing agent was co-oping out to us. That's how we were getting paid. So it's quite simply, now the real estate transaction controlled by 3 contracts. The homeowner hires a real estate agent to sell a house. The buyer has the option to hire the right professional to represent them to buy the house, but now we put it in writing. Okay. And then once these 2 contracted parties bring their buyer and seller together, then the third party is between the buyer, the third contract is between the buyer and the seller. It's very simple. But because we've done it the old way for so long, sometimes we struggle with it. But why would you want to have, if it was another instance, would you want to have the defendant's attorney pay, if you get sued, right? And you're a plaintiff, would you want your attorney to be paid by the person that you're suing? That's absolutely ludicrous, right? Like you have your representative paid by a contract between you and your client. The homeowner has a contract between themselves and the agent or agency that they hired to sell the property. And then the third one is the buyer and the seller. It quite frankly makes sense, but it's just not been done like that for many, many, many years. Okay. And once you can explain this, it makes the process so much easier. Okay. You don't have to struggle as to why it's happening. And if you start talking about, the lawsuit and we did nothing wrong, if you say something like, hey, the real estate industry did nothing wrong, what do you immediately think? If I said, hey, Robert, I did nothing wrong, trust me. You have to unmute yourself.
That certainly would raise a red flag.
Right?
You think you're guilty.
Exactly. They think you did something wrong. I don't know why that is, but in human nature, if I say, trust me, you're like, oh, I don't really trust that guy. If I say I did nothing wrong, you're like, why are you telling me that? Maybe you got a guilty conscience. So, I don't think talking about the reasons why we landed here are particularly relevant. I think the relevance probably lands between, do you want to have an agreement with the person that represents you? And you know what? If you want to do your homework before you hire me, bring it on. Ask me questions. When I go on, listing appointments, I don't know if there's anybody I went on an appointment with recently, but I'm almost disappointed if there's no objection that I need to overcome. Okay, because I'm prepared. You know, I do my homework. You know, whatever I'm doing is in the best interest of the client. That's what gets me repeat business, and I've got nothing to hide. Right? Ask me any question.
Rob, can I pitch in just a bit?
Absolutely.
Sales is an art built around knowing what to say, how to say it, and when to say it.
And when not to say it.
Pardon me?
And when not to say it.
And when not to say it. And we have become very, very good at listing presentations. And I would bet that most of us in the family know exactly what to say in a listing presentation. What I've been doing with my agents has been asking them to develop that same confidence by practicing their response in presentation on this new world we're in, so that they're as good at handling this with the important part is when they've said what they need to say, it has to have been almost like a script, and they have to be able to say it without blinking. The first person to blink loses. And I think that if you're really good with your practiced, you could call it a script or not a script, but you got to be as good at that presentation with as much confidence as you are when you're doing your listing presentation. And so if my advice to the family is practice this, don't wing it, because if you wing it, you're going to lose something in the conversation. And it's too costly to do that. So practice, practice, practice. If you have to learn a script, and don't blink.
So Howard, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think the public looks at the real estate profession and says, wow, they're overpaid people driving fancy cars and making a lot of money?
Well, I think so. I think there's a misperception in the public, especially in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yeah. Well, it's in Florida, New Jersey, Virginia, it's everywhere. Because sometimes we make it look easy what we do. A lot of us drive nice cars. People have watched the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, where in 1 hour they sold a $4 million house. But if you look at the people, you look at the individuals, the faces and the families that are in the business, Howard, it's a really tough business. I remember like Brian Buffini, or I don't know if it was Mike Ferry. One of them would be like, all right, I'm gonna this job where you have to pay to start. You get paid nothing. You drive around with people. You might not ever get a check. Like, you have no health insurance. You got to pay your own taxes, right? Who's going to sign up for it? Well, we got a great group of people that signed up for it. But if we can't protect the value that we provide, because we are not overpaid. There are a lot of people in this industry that make very good money, but they work really hard and they provide an elevated value. Right? There's nobody I've seen in this business, Howard, that makes a whole lot of money sustainably over time that doesn't deliver tremendous value. Okay. I haven't seen anybody that's been generating a unusually high income with bad work ethic, poor communication skills, and limited value. It just doesn't happen.
I agree. I'm in the business very long. And I can tell you no one works harder.
Right. But it's a tough job. But the public, Colleen, doesn't see that. The public sees the glitz, the glamour, the fancy car. We come in with a nice suit and clothes and the Gucci bag, and we sign it up, and they feel like they're overpaying us. But they don't.
Absolutely.
They don't see how the sausage is made. They don't see the value. And sometimes
a lot of things, they are behind the scenes. A lot of things happen behind the scenes that people really don't see, or they don't understand. Like Mike Ferry, you were saying, they said, yeah, I'm 30 years overnight success because you know so much about the business, the stats, the numbers, what's coming on the market, what's selling, that you make it look so easy. Like when just now, my old boss house, that he passed away and everything. I don't know why he never hired a Remax agent. That house has been on the market for 2 years. And I told from the beginning that house there is supposed to be below $20 million. That was going to sell close to $15 million. And guess what? After 2 years, they listed for 17 and it's under contract. Yeah, that is under contract. So when you know so much there that people, how you explain that to people? Hey, they on this block here, you're going to get this much. On that block there, you're going to get that much. I don't know how you, it's not easy to let the people know or for them to understand. I don't know.
So I'm going to tell a story, Tony, that's relevant and that maybe will help us build confidence in the value that we deliver. Okay, there was a story about a mechanic, in a port, and there was a cruise ship that came into port, and the cruise ship, the staff couldn't get it going. Okay, so they hired this specialist. He comes in there, he goes into the engine room, he takes a hammer, and he goes to a piece of the motor. He hits it with the hammer, and the motor starts up, and then they can take it to the next port and get the part permanently fixed. And he gives them a bill for $80,000. Say, excuse me, isn't that like that a little bit expensive? You charge me $80,000 to just take a hammer and knock a piece of equipment to get this cruise ship going. And he said, well, from what I understand, it's about $1 million a day when your ship is out of order. You're not paying me for knocking the hammer or the time I did it. You're paying me for the experience to know exactly what to do at the right time. Right now, I don't know if that resonates with you like it does with me, but when somebody hires you, they're not hiring you for the time that you're using to sell the house. They're hiring you for the expertise and the career that you've built to get the knowledge and confidence to know that you can sell that property for the highest possible price and guide them the correct way, right? You're not trading dollars for hours for dollars, okay? You're buying expertise, right? So if you were to look at how many hours it took for you to become the professional that you are and to anticipate problems in transactions, to understand how to price properties correctly, to understand how to not only price them correctly, but communicate to a homeowner the benefit of doing it that way. And then to share with them how you can negotiate and to take your experience. Who's ever had this experience? You put a property on the market, you do a great job, you get an offer and it's a great offer and the seller says, oh, it's the first offer, let me wait. Anybody ever had that experience?
Oh, yeah.
All right. How many times do you get a better offer when they reject the first offer? Anybody want?
Almost never.
Yeah, virtually never, right?
Yeah.
So this is a new agent's dilemma is the seller says, hey, Tony, it's only been on for a week. It's only been on for 2 days. Why don't we wait? Right. And you're tongue tied. You can't explain why that's a really bad idea. But if you've been experienced and, we're not, this is not a stacked deck here. We all know that usually your best offer comes early on in the process. And over time, the situation just gets worse because the public says, hey, it's been on the market. There might be something wrong. Maybe I can negotiate. Maybe there's a price cut. So it almost never gets better over time. So that's part of the experience that we need to be able to communicate to somebody and maybe even set the right expectation. Like when you go on a listing appointment, hey, if we get this right, our best offer is going to be one that comes in early on. I just want you to understand that. And when you're working with buyers, you need to have that same strategy call, a strategy session, right? Forget about buyer consultation, right? To me, that sounds canned. But let's have a strategy meeting, a strategy session on what it takes to get you in the house that you want. And let's have an honest call. Like, if you're going out and trying to buy a house with, 2008 strategy, right, where you're trying to negotiate on all the homes, you're probably not going to be successful, right? You're going to watch the market go up. And, Glenn, I don't know why I think because you're on camera, I'm getting Glenisms, but you have a saying says stop the clock, right?
Yep.
And you talk to your team about that. Can you share with the group what that means?
Yeah, everyone's trying to outpace or outsave the appreciation on the home prices, but you just have to stop the clock, buy what you can afford to at the time, and then you're in the cycle so that you'll be in the upgrade cycle, the upsize, downsize, eventually all that stuff. But if you never stop the clock, you'll always be trying to catch up.
You're chasing the stock. You're chasing the process. All right. Nobody ever times it perfectly, but over time we do know that prices go up. Um, you know, uh, if you haven't heard some of my conversations, hey, if I gave you a two-headed coin and I flipped it, what would you call? Heads, right? Housing is the same way. Interest rates go up. Who knows? There can be World War III. Interest rates can go up to 12%. If you locked in a 6 3/4 or a 6 1/4, Jeff Bretzer, if you locked in a 6 3/4 mortgage and rates went up to 11, how would you feel?
Excellent.
And if you locked in a 6 3/4 mortgage, Jeff, and rates went down to 4.5, what would you do?
Refinance.
So to me, it sounds like you win both ways, right? But if you have somebody waiting on the sidelines for rates to change, they're not stopping the clock. And it's not a desperate pitch to get them to take action. Okay. It's a conversation that, we're educating them. There are some people that, are imposters that are looking to buy, right? They're out there looking at houses, but they're afraid of their shadow. They're never going to buy. And, our mission, our job is to be able to identify the people that, are motivated. And if you find them a reasonable deal, that they're going to take action because we've educated them. Okay. It's like if somebody doesn't want to sell their house, you're wasting your time listing it because they're going to put it on for 250,000 over where the market is, and they're not going to negotiate. And that's not a good listing. That's called a loss, a waste of time. And the same is true for buyers. Bobby Golden, are you able to talk for a moment?
Yep, I am.
So Bobby, you take a lot. Your business is what, 80% listings, maybe more?
Well, closer to 75, but yes.
Okay, so you're a heavy lister. Do you come across any listings that you say I don't want to take because they're not reasonable?
I have a listing right now that I probably won't extend because the owner is not being reasonable.
And how much do you get paid on that one, just out of curiosity, when the listing expires?
0.
And how much fun is it to have a conversation with that person?
0.
And you've invested time and money and you're going to get no return on it. And I heard this, Bobby, that sometimes those people, they even give you a bad review. So after all that work for nothing, you get a bad review on Zillow or Realtor.com or somewhere on Google. So those listings are bad. And, if you live in the abundant planet, you're going to walk away from a bad deal at the onset, and you're going to have the skills to identify that. Were there clues, Bobby, if you look back, that you might not have wanted to take that?
The answer is yes. It's a personal friend of mine. Bobby Durso and I are splitting the listing, so we both knew what we were getting into. But I just thought once the market responded, it would back up what we were saying, which it is, but the seller's still not listing. So I'm at the point now where I'm just gonna let her know it's not working out and she can do whatever she wants to do.
Yep. And Rob and Bobby are both dynamite professionals, and if they can't sell it, nobody can. But if we find people that are motivated and take the right actions, 99.9% of the time, they're going to be successful. They're going to be thanking you. They're going to be giving you repeat business. They're going to stop the clock. And that's today's message about certainty. For those of you who missed the early part, Howard, wave your hand. Howard is Remax Excalibur. He's 3 offices, 120 agents in Arizona that are now part of our family. And we're going to be doing our weekly Zoom meetings at 11 o'clock. so that we can accommodate their family. And for context, they have to get up and on camera by 8 a.m. So they're suffering a little bit too. We're all making a sacrifice. So 11 to 12, I know it's going to be hard. We've been doing this 9:30 time slot forever. But I'm super excited. I have learned so much by spending 4 to 5 days with the sensei, Howard Leon. And I hope I gave him half of what I learned from what he built. So we're all going to be back to that.
Rob, you're being very generous. My team is looking forward to working with you. My family is going to be introduced to another great family. This is going to be a great alliance. And I want to see where it's at in 5 years, because it's going to be really great. So thank you guys. I appreciate it very much.
I'll see.
I'd like to say welcome. I'm Colleen Stavinsky, and I go to Arizona quite often. My brother-in-law lives there in Scottsdale. I have family in Phoenix. I have family in Tucson. So Arizona is a dynamic market.
Wow.
Welcome, welcome.
At least you have a great place to come for a cup of coffee.
All right.
Hopefully, Colleen will have some synergies in referring business back and forth. I'm thinking maybe even at like an R4, we could have a booth, because now we have 4, 5, 6 different markets that we cover, and nothing bad can come from great people getting together. So.
And they are great people. I
Absolutely.
know people with the Excalibur there that I know quite a few people there. So it's a great addition.
Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next week at what time?
11 after
right.
breakfast.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See y'all later.
Bye-bye.